Human speech is very powerful. That we've spoken about many times. It's not known. People don't realize the power that we have with speech. Even before we get to the spiritual, simply in the way we run our lives on a daily basis, how much speech contributes to our experience of what we are and who we are. But when we come to the spiritual, the entire spiritual world is running on our speech. Because this is the most powerful weapon we have spiritually, to make realities in the world of spirit. One of those powers is the power of a neder, or a shvuah. A person makes a declaration, takes upon themselves to perform or not to perform a certain act. And that becomes ingrained within the spirit, so much so that the spirit will punish itself if it violates its oath. This is a very powerful tool. It's a very powerful weapon. This weapon goes under the categories of blessing and curse, because what a person is doing when they're making an oath is they're inviting a curse if they violate their oath. And the Spirit knows this. The Spirit knows these things inherently. It was designed to know. It knows it in such a way that no matter what human beings will tell us, the Spirit will still know this. Even in the most corrupt and manipulated environments, the human spirit knows inherently certain realities. It knows it from beyond. It knows it from a different world, a different place, the place from where it comes. So when a person makes a shvuah, they're creating in the spiritual world, they're creating a commitment that's going to result in their experience. This is the nature of the soul. On this premise, all of religion was built. The entire Torah was given to Klal Yisrael, but first they had to accept that they want this Torah. If they wouldn't accept, the Torah cannot be forced upon them. But when they accept it with an oath, which meant that if they violated their oath, then there can be consequences. Then a curse will befall them. And the Spirit knows what a curse is. The Spirit knows how to create its own curse. Everybody that's experienced overwhelming trauma, overwhelming emotion, overwhelming anger, can see how the Spirit behaves differently under certain circumstances, in ways that the Spirit clearly does not want or intend to. But it simply has no choice based on certain spiritual principles. It has to interact with reality a certain way. So when a person takes an oath upon themselves, it's not up to them later to say, well, I didn't really mean it. The soul is not going to buy that. So there are rituals, there are ways that it can be done. where we would find new information, where we can convince the spirit that had it known this information prior to making the commitment, it wouldn't have taken upon itself that oath. And that's a way out. Then the spirit will release the curse. But if one simply says, I'm not spiritual, I don't care, the curse will still be there. We can't override the principles of how the spirit functions. We can, within those principles, create whatever realities we desire if we have an understanding. But we cannot simply say, oh, it's up to me, I waive the principles now. It's not in my interest now to have these principles, and therefore I don't want them. The spirit does not recognize this language. Yom Kippur, the holiest day of the year, we start Kol Nidre. Everybody comes, everybody's very serious. It's a serious day, it's a serious time, but most people have no idea why is it significant what we're doing. Most people would say, I don't remember making any oath this year. I'm just saying it because it says in the Machzer. But all sins, all curses that are upon humanity, individually and collective, were cast by our souls, by our spirits, the spirits that are alive now, based on the instructions we received from the spirits who came before us. If we look at the world, we can see the world is cursed. But who's cursing it? We can see that there's a beautiful species struggling to survive in an environment that was created perfectly to suit all their needs. An environment that not only doesn't require struggle, but was naturally designed to cause joy and pleasure continuously. This is within the design. This is what the human body was designed for. This is what the food we eat was designed for. This is what everything around us was designed for. This is obvious by anybody who will try to observe. Everything was designed for ease, comfort, joy, and pleasure. And yet, there's a tremendous struggle. There's a struggle because there's a curse. There's not one curse. There are many. And who can cast the curse now on our generation? Only us. Only us. But we've been instructed spiritually to cast the curse, and we don't even realize this is happening to us unconsciously. Most of humanity is not aware that they're doing anything to hurt humanity. Most of humanity thinks that they're doing everything to help humanity. Few and far between are those who've already made a deal with the devil where they intentionally want to hurt humanity. But nevertheless, all of us are somehow involved in living life in a way that was not intended to be lived. Humanity has lost its way. And so on the holiest day of the year, we want to remove all spells, all curses, all entanglements that the Spirit has brought upon itself so that we can receive forgiveness. What is forgiveness? Forgiveness is a removal of the curse. We want to remove the spell. We don't see any reason why we need to hurt ourselves anymore. And so the entire Torah is given based on the power of our souls. What gives the Torah power? The power to punish or the power to reward? Our souls. Our souls give the Torah power. Without our souls, the Torah has no meaning. The Torah has no purpose. The Torah would not cast any types of spells if there weren't souls who will translate the words and cast the spells. To cast a spell is the activity of a spirit. It's not the activity of the text itself. Each heart casts a spell in accordance with its own attributes. A heart that lacks compassion is casting a curse. That's the only thing it knows how to cast. Every interpretation, every thought, every emotion, every interaction goes back to the heart. What is it creating? What does it understand? What does it think is happening here? How does it see the other people around it? Are they adversaries? Are they competitors? Are they just objects? And then, with that attitude, with that interaction, the spell is being cast. The spiritual is taking shape. Reality is becoming. And then the biology reacts to that. Our biology is subject to blessings and curses. Not only our biology, animals and trees. And even inanimate objects, rocks, crystals. They're all subject to blessings and curses. This is the basis of our belief. This is the base of the Torah. Somebody who doesn't believe in this cannot understand most of what it says in the Torah. It's not everything. The Torah outright speaks about these blessings and these curses, how they were being cast. Where the people in Har Gerizim and Har Evel that had to recast the spells when they came into the Eretz Yisrael because it wasn't enough what they did on the other side of the river. There was a formula for how these things work, for how the Spirit works, for the principles that guide the human soul. And so the way that we practice the rituals that we follow, the behaviors that we try to encourage or try to avoid, they're all based on a collective acceptance. To live with those rules. and to suffer the consequences if we don't. This is what Klal Yisrael took upon themselves when they accepted the Torah. And so the meaning of what we've accepted depends on each generation, on how they're going to define that meaning, how they're going to apply it. And therefore, in order for us to apply the appropriate meaning to the words, we need to have the wisdom to understand the principles the Torah was based on. Only a generation that will have enough wisdom to understand the principles will be able to align the spirit of the Torah with the body of the Torah, the way that we practice the Torah. We haven't had an update to the way that we practice for thousands of years, because people haven't understood the depth of what's being discussed. And so only when we will understand what's being discussed can we apply the principles appropriately. And applying the principles appropriately means that a human being doesn't have to violate the collective agreement in order to survive. Because the collective agreement was designed to serve the collective, each generation in accordance with their wisdom, with their knowledge, with their understanding. To be able to live in accordance with the principles means that we can have forgiveness. We can know that we were forgiven. We can experience forgiveness. We can experience a removal of the curse. We can experience an alignment with nature, with reality, with the source from where we receive life. And so the life force, when it shines upon us from the unity, from the source, from the most subtle, it shines through all of our perceptions. And within those perceptions are the thought forms of the blessing and the curse, the thought forms of the allowed and the not allowed, the thought forms of any violations that cause us to feel guilty. All are filtering the light, the infinite light, that comes from the source, and are making it denser, are making it more gross to our experience, are making it feel a little less alive. And these become like heavy garments upon the spirit, garments that cause the spirit not to recognize itself, until the spirit could start feeling uncomfortable being itself, because its own perception, the filters that are between it and reality, the curses that have caused that life force to deteriorate, are causing the spirit to see itself in a way that is unacceptable to its own nature. So may we all find forgiveness, find favor, find grace in the eyes of the Source, in the eyes of the One who sees through all. And may He remove all curses from us individually and collectively, and redeem us for the sake of His name.